Okay, hello. My name is Mark Mullery. I was the assistant director on Wolfwalkers. I'm here with Tomm Moore, who co-directed Wolfwalkers with Ross Stewart, and with Will Collins, the writer of Wolfwalkers. And this is for the Spark Festival Vancouver. How are you guys?
Very good, Mark. Thanks.
Good. So I came on as assistant director after a full kind of a few passes of the script had existed. So when the line producer was asking me if I was interested in this project, I basically took the script, went up to the crew room in the Maltings in Kilkenny, sat there for a few hours, read through it. I knew pretty instantly I had to take a job on this. So that says something anyway, Will. But the question I have for you is, I'm wondering what did I miss there? Because I came into a pretty well-formed script. Now, I know we have rewrites and things like that that we're going to talk about, but Ross has told me before that they, Tom and him, wrote out a handful of interests and different things that they might want to make a movie about, and he dug it up recently, and most of it was kind of still there and still relevant. I'm wondering, what did Tom and Ross bring to you when they asked you to write this?
I think I started in March of 2013, and I can remember it was like definitely look. If you're ever looking for good research assistants, you should definitely turn to Tom and Ross, because they had done all the legwork, and they'd found the world, they'd found the characters, they knew very much the type of story and the themes that they that they wanted to address. So no, I'm kind of vague on it because it's 2013 and now this is 2020. But I remember there being characters, and I remember you had some, like maybe a one-page outline or something at that stage, Tom. If I'm
Yeah, I remember Ross and I wrote something, like he found the little notebook recently that had the basic ideas, but I also remember we'd written out a fairly basic, and it was fairly rudimentary, and the structure was fairly rough compared to what we ended up with, because even the first few passes we did with you, Will, like Robin was a boy, there was like another hunter at one point, like a badder hunter, there was all kinds of other stuff at the very beginning that we had to work through with you to get to even the basis of the script that we ended up with,
Yeah. So when I came in, I remember we had a story. Our first story meeting was around March
Yes.
2013, but I remember very clearly coming out of that story meeting, knowing that we had the germs of something great.
And the
We had it
pitch,
structured.
yeah, the pitch seemed easy. It seemed like, oh wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And I remember being excited. I remember Paul being excited that it just kind of was fully formed already. Because you know what the funny thing was, Adrian was directing or art directing Song of the Sea at the time, and I, like in 13, we were still in the middle of finishing Song of the Sea. And I remember telling the story to Adrian, and he goes, "That doesn't sound like an idea. That sounds like you're telling me about a film that's been made and you've seen, and you're just telling me about it." Like he was so
Yeah.
sure it was there, but ironically, we went through a lot of drafts after that.
Oh, we did. Yeah, we did. Like the gas thing about it was, I think I was just thinking about reflecting on it today because there were so many drafts. Um, from the get go, yeah, we had the setting and we had kind of like the characters, and Robin was a boy specifically, and but the fact that Robin was a boy had the story in a certain was telling the story from a kind of a very different point of view than from when we changed her to being a girl. Like
Yeah.
that changed the story dramatically and for the better. And so an awful lot of the ideas that we had in the very first draft, which was, I actually only revisited it there like literally over the last couple of weeks just to see, geez, when was my first draft? And like it was actually a pretty lean story, but it was actually quite dark, and it was full of action. And there was a bad hunter, but there was also like a kind of a Lord Mayor in it, and but he was like a very kind of wishy-washy type Lord Mayor.
Yeah.
And I kind of find that Cromwell kind of became this amalgamation of the two characters as it went
Yeah.
forward, kind of embodying both kind of like ideas. But when the critical moment, I think, in the story, the changing point in our kind of development of the stories was when we changed Robin from being a boy to being a girl, because an awful lot of the conflicts and the drama took a different shape and took a different form and became, ideas that were kind of a bit muddy on suddenly became absolutely kind of clear and crystal clear from that point on, I feel.
And I remember there was a movie that we'd been looking at the time called Son of Rambo that Ross brought to the table. That was actually a class movie about sort of similar, like a bold kid, a bad kid, and a kind of good Puritan kind of religious kid, and how they became friends and all like that. But it was modern times and all. But I remember there was a tiny short bit of debate when we went, oh yeah, that's interesting to make them both girls. And then I remember Nora saying, but they could both be boys. And we were like, oh yeah, but then it would be like Son of Rambo. And, you know, it was really interesting that we just talked about it casually. But once we settled on the idea that Robin was a girl, all the conflict, everything that was kind of making the little boy Robin hard to write became easy, because little boy Robin in that society would have been celebrated for everything Robin wanted to do, whereas a little girl wanting to do those things was up against it from the get-go. So we didn't have to contrive impediments. Immediately a little girl in 1650 was up against everything that we wanted for the themes of the story about, you know, oppression and kind of trying to fit into a society and feeling like a square peg in a round hole sometimes at that age and all.
And the dynamic between Robin and Maeve changed. For me, I was delighted because, well, I didn't write Kells, but like Kells was a male and female dynamic, and Song of the Sea was like, you know, Ben and Saoirse, and I was just delighted to have like two girls, their friendship took on it was easier in a way to imagine and to write and to realize once they became two girls.
Well, it was interesting. I remember the editor Dara at the time was kind of transposing some of it as we were getting into storyboard, and he was talking about it with like a queer subtext, as this is like a girl who can't come out to her father and all. I remember us sort of saying that's really interesting, but it was just something that we talked about. And then I noticed on Twitter a huge amount of people reading that into it, and maybe much more than we intended. But it was definitely, I remember it made a lot of sense that if a kid was wanting to be or do something opposite to what the parent wanted, it was so much clearer whenever we had a little daughter in 1650 and a father, you know, that wanted to keep her safe. It just all clicked together so much better.
Yeah, I think I remember certainly in the storyboarding process. So for people watching, obviously this will be when Will would have done many drafts, and by the time we're storyboarding, you know, we're in that kind of last cycle of trying to get that right. And as that was being edited together by Dara, I remember we used to kind of habitually get in the different modes and go, right, well, in the hero's journey, this is kind of where we need to hit here. Then we go, or in the action movie, you kind of need to be hitting this bit there. And one that we used over and over was the coming out movie. One was the you don't realize the kind of person I am. And so it doesn't surprise me that so many people read it as that, because structurally it does actually take that form. I think.
Yeah, and
certainly
I remember
in the edit. Yeah,
I remember at the time Frozen was massive, and I read that whole thing as a massive coming out movie, and like, you know, it seemed so obvious to me. And I remember Will and I were using that analogy one time in a story meeting when we hit on one of my favorite moments in the movie, which I'm always looking for those. When I'm working with Will, or like, what are those little mythic moments that feel, oh, that has to be in the film, because it gives you an anchor point. And it was when Dad was holding on, like Sean Bean's character was holding on too tightly to Robin, and she had to literally come out of her human body and transform into a wolf. And it was like so symbolic, so mythic, and it kind of summarized the whole, you know, the pain of those two characters' arcs at that moment. That, and it was so visual as well, that we were like, okay, we've something really strong there, really clear there, you know.
You could feel the that's it. You're absolutely right on this. That you're looking for those cinematic moments which encapsulates the entire drama of the film. And and it's been told visually, and that's the main thing.
Because I hate that part that you're so good at, where you just have to get something out, because it kills me. But then once you have something, it's always so valuable to work with you, because you always get something out pretty quickly and you iterate drafts quickly. And then you have something to kind of look for the nuggets in, and then refine it down and keep those nuggets and then refine it down, because we went through a lot of drafts.
We went through a lot, we went through a lot of drafts, like sure was 5 years. 5 years of development, I'd say. And but the weirdest thing, I don't want to get into a Song of the Sea. There's the difference between Song of the Sea and this was that going into Song of the Sea, we're both more naive. But Song of the Sea, we absolutely, when you showed me the conceptual trailer, you think you'd maybe finished it. I don't think you'd even finished the conceptual trailer when I came on. But I knew the tone. The tone was absolutely clear. but we didn't have an idea of the story, not an idea, not a notion of what the story was. So many drafts, and
I
just kind of going,
know.
oh, is it this? Is it that? Oh, hang on a second, it's this. But sure, we had everything in the kitchen sink and all that sort of jazz. And the difference between that and Wolfwalkers is that when we started off Wolfwalkers, we were very much more, I think, or certainly I felt on more stable ground. I knew what the story was going to be, even though, let's say, if the compass changed, I knew where the north was. But yeah, the rest of the thing, it was like turning. Sometimes it was like turning a cruise ship, because you had so much to do with regarding the story to change, to move all the other pieces in the story. Like, for instance, when Robin became a girl, you then all of a sudden have to realign. But on saying that, yeah, we had loads of drafts, but I think always from that very first day, I was very confident in the north we were heading towards.
Oh yeah, and we had
a couple of drafts to get to that stage in song.
Oh God, yeah. Like, and it was interesting because we continued a collaboration from song into the writing of this, and it was interesting because we were able to drag our experience from song into this, and I do think it made it a little bit leaner. And when I say we did loads of drafts, we probably didn't do as much massive changing between drafts once we'd found like Robin's correct gender, and once we found that correct structure. You know, I do remember there was a lot of debate of who would get shot. Whether Maeve as a wolf would get shot or Moll, like, and then would Robin spend her time healing Maeve or Moll while all the action was outside, and then she was missing out on all the action? How were we?
Tom,
it was.
Tom, do you remember Robin got shot?
Yeah, Robin originally got shot. That seemed so important to us that the dad would shoot their son, thinking they were a wolf. That
Yeah. Oh man, those were the days. But like, I'm so glad we came. That was the great benefit of our iterative process, you know, where we spent an awful lot of time like on calls like this, you know, or through Skype, where we just would spend days and days and days just going over an outline document. Even though we would have had a script, we would have gone back to an outline document and actually just like try to beat it out and kind of figure out what was going on.
Ross has a photo of me from one of those meetings. Will, I don't know if it was one of the times you were in Kilkenny or whether we were on Skype, but I'm literally curled in a fetal position in the corner of the little room. Like, what? I thought we had something, and I don't know if we have anything. And Breadwinner's deep in production, and this is supposed to be the next thing we're making. I don't know what to do.
And I remember actually that happening, and I remember being on the other line going, "Lads, it's grand.
Yeah,
we'll get there. It's grand." I remember that, but it's the
most painful. It's the most painful process when it reminds me of those little games where you almost have the picture made and you just want to take the pieces out and put them in, but you have to take it all apart again.
Yeah.
You know, like a Rubik's Cube or whatever. Yeah.
Well, actually, let's talk about that, right? Because the one of these that I particularly remember what was quite a painful one, because we had essentially embarked on production when we made a big first act rewrite, and to summarize that, I guess it's easiest just for me to say Bill and Robin used to be outlaws living in the forest. That used to be how the film began, and I believe as well that was a darling in some sense that you guys really wanted to hold on to, the image of the father and daughter together. I think you referred to that movie Captain Fantastic a little bit, just that idea of this, like, I mean, I don't mind, Tom or Will. I guess Tom, talk me through what was it like having to change.
Well, there was a lot of artwork, and people can discover it in the Art book for that period, because somehow Ross and I really wanted that Robin Hood outlaws on the run, and we were really wed to an idea that Bill had been in Cromwell's army and was doing this for a pardon. He was deciding. We thought it was important for him, and I don't know why we thought Bill was so important, but for a long time we felt that Bill was important to be sympathetic, and that the reason he was killing wolves was to get a pardon because he deserted the army to look after Robin. So we had this whole backstory. Robin's mum died. Bill had left the English Civil War to go and take care of Robin, and now they were hiding out in England, and now Cromwell was here, and his only chance of survival was to take on this ask for a pardon in exchange for killing all the wolves. And so this was a whole complex thing that I think we'd gotten really in love with and had storyboarded it out and everything. And I remember Will coming down and seeing a draft and kind of like an animatic draft and like shaking your head. It was too complex at the start and the setup wasn't there and everything. And we were a little bit crestfallen.
I know, like I would say, like for me, I had a darling, all right, definitely, because I'll always remember writing the very, very first pages of the very, very first draft, which was on a flight back from Toronto where we had the world premiere of Song of the Sea. And I was sitting down and I was in an airplane, I was on a flight, and I'll never do it again. But anyway, I was writing these pages, and it was this, as you're saying, this sequence in the woods, and it was dialogue free, and I wanted it to be action and intense, but I wanted to set up the characters without any dialogue, and their dilemma and who they were would all be told by action, and it was going to be very simple and very pure. But and we kind of kept this spirit as the drafts went along. But as soon, again, the turning point, the big turning point, as soon as Robin became a girl, that all changed.
Yeah.
And it just became much more. And I remember you and Ross were definitely kind of like hanging on to it, but it was just for the elegance of the story. It's Robin's story, and it was just much more elegant if she started off in a place, even though she might have only just arrived in the town. Yeah, like but.
Yeah.
From the point of view of the audience who's watching it,
Yeah.
she starts off in a place in a cage. She starts off in the cage. She's not out of the cage, goes into the cage, and then goes out of the cage. It kind of almost nullifies the sense of exploration, the sense of discovery of that forest. So it's just, I think it just made a lot of sense once we put that starting point there.
And I do think we tied a lot with whether or not we should see Moll being captured on screen at the start. Yeah. And one of the things I think I benefited from on Song was a lot with Jim Capobianco. On this, we had Jerica Cleland and Jim as well, and Darren Holmes was an editor, and they all had sort of Elliot Cohen as well, friends in the industry who had fresh eyes on the script and animatic, and they would drop a bomb on us like, Moll's already captured, she's in the castle, and we'd be like, ah, shit, yeah, you're right, or that kind of thing, that we'd done all this work on, like, they're, Robin and Bill are in the forest, life is good, and then suddenly this hunting party goes by and they've captured a wolf, and what's this all about? And I remember and one thing that we carried on from Song of the Sea was doing a lot of drawing, like trying to find those mythic moments, those epic moments. And for me, I remember trying to draw that sequence you wrote at the beginning, because it was like Batman and Robin. It's like Bill and Robin were like this awesome hunting duo, like the assistant and the master and the assistant, two Jedi, and it was all silent and cool. And it was very hard to go, oh, actually no, we don't need that.
Yeah, because once she's a girl, it becomes a different problem. It just kind of negates it, like, so it becomes.
And I think the characters made much more sense than that she was always trying to be something that he wasn't letting her be, and the whole arc and all just clicked into.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And what about Maeve? Because I'm wondering how much of a defined character she was from early on. Because my experience of it, again, like I say, before we began storyboarding, I read the script. Maeve, as we understand her, as far as I'm concerned, was basically on the page. But we had some trouble in storyboards with her, that trying to show her as confident and a trickster and having all these wolves, the first few passes of boards, she was actually quite unlikable in a way, which I think wasn't really in the script. I think that was just a fact of people trying to make it work in this way on screen, trying to make the way she toys with Robin. I think we got the balance quite nice in the end through the work of a lot of great storyboarders. But I'm wondering, Will, for you, like how much of a development did Maeve have over the drafts?
Again, this is an interesting one, because I can kind of use the experience of Song a little bit for the character of Maeve. In Song of the Sea, we had Ben, and Ben was this mean older brother to his little sister. And I remember on the page going, oh God, he's too mean, he's too mean, he's too mean. But I knew once I'd heard the actor David Rawl, once I heard his voice and the intonation of his voice, I went, no, he's going to bring the humanity, he's going to bring the softness, he's going to bring the life to this, or the gentleness to this character, as well as the pain, as well as the meanness, like, So on my first, I think I I was too, in my first passes with Maeve, she was always wild, and she was always rough, and she was always maybe too vulgar at times. But she was, it was, I think it was something we just dialed in. But I always kind of had the kind of faith that the person we get to perform it at the end of the day will really be the kind of the critical factor in how the character is portrayed. And Eva, I like, she did an utterly amazing job, because I'll always remember there's one bit of there's one moment in the script where this Wolfwalkers isn't one of those, like, weepy films, but there's a moment that always catches me, and it's the moment where Maeve goes into her mammy, telling her about her sleeping mammy, telling her about, like, she's made this buddy, and it just goes from kind of like this happiness to this deep worry that she has. And I always remember when Eva did in the voice record, when Eva did the line reading for that, her first take, I was welling up, because she just nailed it. She brought that balance, that humanity, and that lightness, and that humor, and that little bit of boldness as well, like, but sorry, I don't know if I'm answering the question properly, Tom.
No, yeah, I think you're right.
Boards, you know more boards than me.
No. I think you're right, and I think for us, a lot of it, the character designing and everything like that, was trying to find a line that keep her likable, but we wanted her to be much more earthy and kind of, let's say, real and not too ethereal, compared to, say, Aisling or Saoirse, who are both these kind of like slightly removed, fey kind of characters, where we wanted Maeve to be much more like in Son of Rambo, a little bit like off-putting, how boisterous they are when you first meet them, So I think we had an idea who the character was. The casting was so crucial, and I just think, like, we started in 2013. I think Ava was born in like 2012 or something like that. Oh, so you know what I mean? I think we were just lucky that she was coming into the world in time to play the part for us.
What is she? She's 16 now, is she?
Yeah, something like that. I think she's 12. Yeah, I think she was a bit. She was born a bit earlier, but still, it was always amazing to me, these kids. We had same success with, Kristen Mooney and Evan Maguire on Kells, and David Rawl, and Lucy O'Connell on Song of the Sea, that these kids are born just at the right time for us when we're making these stories, and then we find them and they're able to bring like at least 50% to the part, at least, because it brings so much more. Like, when they play the part and whenever we find the right voice actor for it, everything clicks into place. And it's not so much that we have to rewrite things, but things just sort of solidify around the character, don't they?
It's the tone you're looking for. They bring a certain tone to it, and it's a balance. And
it was great to have you at the voice records for that as well, though, Will. Do you remember? Because we were there was moments where we had to like just pick at. Remember Maria Doyle Kennedy just picking at exactly how Moll explained the predicament that she was in with wanting Maeve to leave and everything, and it didn't sound right, and we were able to on the cuff kind of try a few drafts. And
it was lovely. It's a lovely experience, because it's just you're there, and it's like a critical moment of, like, if we don't get this right now, this critical bit of plot won't work. And she, in the last minute, she goes, hang on a second, is she saying, like, I can't remember the question she raised, but it was a really astute and very, like, anyway, she brought a note literally as we were about to record the line. I went, actually, yes. Actually, so I can't remember what it was, but she was just very smart in her observation of the dialogue in that particular recording. I loved it. It was great.
So can I ask as well, kind of the flip side, the other side of writing for character, writing scene direction, stage direction. You're saying about when you're coming back from Toronto and you're trying to write an intro that is wordless. I'm interested in that, because this is a very action-packed movie. Like, it really clips along, especially in the third act. Is it fun writing action? Is it fun to get a chance to do that?
I would say yes, right? I would say absolutely at the beginning, and I absolutely loved the challenge of going in to write an action movie, and that was totally and like, so first of all, like, I'm basically just imagining the film in my head. All I can just, and what I'm imagining in my head is really badly drawn stick figures, right? So I've got these badly drawn stick figures, and they have to tell a compelling kind of story in my head. And I'm imagining the film I could potentially see, you know, that film that I'd like to see. It's so exciting to go in and start writing it and seeing it take shape on the page, where you're seeing the cuts, you're seeing the shots, and you're seeing the, you know, in my head at times I was imagining a Western. I was imagining watching a Sergio Leone Western, like Once Upon a Time in the West, you know. So I was imagining it like that, the beats of it, or the pace of it. But when you're getting to the big finale, action-packed set pieces, it's exhausting. It's utterly exhausting, because I know that no matter what I write, it's just going to be done better by the storyboard artists, and it's just going to be done. And so I'm just kind of like giving hints to the person that's ultimately the person who is more talented and more skilled and more capable than I. But I'm just basically giving them the breadcrumbs to be able to make something amazing. And thankfully they did. They made something incredible.
I think you're being humble, because there's one thing that happened on this where I'd never really done it as much before, but we really gave a lot of power to certain storyboard artists to own a sequence. And then when a sequence would get bogged down and we were like, why can't we get this to work? We'd go back to the script and we'd see that everything that needed to happen had been laid out there, and we'd wandered off into a cool storyboard or a cool visual idea that the board artist had brought. Definitely. And we'd forgotten that in the script exactly what needed to happen did. And the only exception to that is the Running with the Wolves, which was quite a short part of the script that was almost written to be expanded in boards, but it did include Dad hunting in the forest at the same time, and that the girls were being kind of hunted, and that one changed in storyboard completely to a more of a pause point, you know. But other than that, anytime the action was like not working in edit, we were like, oh, go back to the script and see what Will had intended. Okay, this, right, that's what's wrong. Go back and pare it down to that. So, you know, right. those breadcrumbs, as you put it, are very crucial, because storyboard artists, as amazing and talented as they are, can often go off in a kind of a direction and lose the breadcrumbs a little bit.
Will, quite seriously, that happened 3 or 4 times in the third act, where the action was getting away from us. And we wondered why it wasn't working. And then we started thinking it must not have worked on the page. And we realized we had wandered, really. And it happened many times. Like, it's totally true.
And it's funny when I look at the finished, well for us. That's lovely to hear. I'll take the compliment. But I love in the finished film how it's cut together. Like, it's compressed. The action is compressed. And, like, you know, I was like, oh, that's way better than I ever imagined. You know, the editing of it is so good. It's so neat and so tight that there's overlapping, and it's really good.
And the truth is that's great editors, because parallel action like that, very, very hard to do. And I mean, we did discuss, Tom, different ideas of, like, there's a little bit of the, like, doctor with the electric pads going clear, and we're trying to cut back to that. We're trying to get this, like, parallel editing as it goes, but it's one of the hardest things to do in filmmaking, and it was the work of many hands in the end, I think, you know.
And going back to your point, that was one of the hardest. That's the hardest sequence to write, was always to go into that third act, big set pieces with all these different stages, different conflict zones going on. But the fun action to write is when it's, like, tight, and it's when it's it's just 2 characters, or it's just very one location. That's great fun. That's exciting.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I think we are probably at time, so we better leave it there. So I want to thank Will Collins, writer of Wolfwalkers. Tomm Moore co-directed Wolfwalkers with Ross Stewart. My name is Mark Mullery. I was the assistant director. Hope you're enjoying Spark Festival of Vancouver so far. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
All right.